Welcome to This Week in Health IT Influence, where we talk about the influence of technology on health with the people who are making it happen. Today, our top 10 countdown, the most listened to episodes of 2020. My name is Bill Russell, former healthcare CIO coach, consultant, and creator of This Week in Health IT. This is our final episode of the year, and this has been a year. It's really an era-defining year, the kind of year that will change our lives and healthcare forever. We've had the chance to talk to so many great guests this year, and they have shared their experience, their wisdom, and we are so appreciative of that. You know, I've learned a ton, and I think the community has communicated to me that it has been very beneficial to hear the kind of things that the health systems are doing in real time, the best practices, the approach to so many new things that have come about as a result of the pandemic in 2020. I want to take this chance to thank Sirius Healthcare and our channel sponsors for supporting our mission to develop the next generation of health IT leaders and our work to amplify the best thinking to propel healthcare forward. In addition to Sirius, our channel sponsors include VMware, Starbridge Advisors, Galen Healthcare, Health Lyrics, Pro Talent Advisors, Health Next, McAfee, and Hillrom. Without their support, our show would not be possible. So thank you very much for all your support in 2020. This is our third and final recap show of the year. If you missed the first, there's a COVID series recap. We did daily shows early on in the initial surge, and we were talking to health systems on a daily basis about what they were doing and what they were doing in preparation. And we did a recap of some of those shows and some of the great content that was shared with us. We also did a Newsday recap, and you'll want to check out that as well. That's just the news throughout the year and the things that we were talking about. And we go into some of those clips. So hopefully you'll listen to the COVID and the Newsday recap. But this is the top 10 most listened to countdown, eagerly awaited. So let's just get to it. Number 10 this year, we talked to a lot of CMIOs, we talked to a lot of CIOs, CISOs, and others. And from time to time, we get the opportunity to talk to both of them at the same time or multiple at the same time. And one of the things I like to pose is the question of how do you work together? How do you get things done together? How do you collaborate on strategy? How do you collaborate on supporting the business? And this episode was titled Team Approach to Health IT from Baptist Health in Kentucky. This is Trisha Julian, who is the CIO at Baptist Health, and Brett Oliver, who's been on the show a couple times, who's the CMIO at Baptist Health Kentucky. So kicking us off at number 10, Trisha Julian and Brett Oliver. It's one of those areas where you guys could potentially fight. Brett, you might want more dollars, and Trisha, you might want more dollars, or you might think your project's more important than the other. So how does that work together? How do you guys work together on strategy?
So one of the first things we do, as you well know, and you just described how you played a supportive role in many of your business's initiatives when you were CIO. That's true for us too. So first and foremost, IT doesn't form our strategy on our own. We have to understand what the business is going after. And then as we understand what the business strategy is, then we ask ourselves, okay, where will they need technology? How ready is our technology to support those initiatives? So some of what we've sought to do is Brett and I, with working with our leaders, and Michael's involved in this with his, the three of us are intentional about seeking to understand in what priority are those given business strategies. So what's the timeline for a given business strategy, and then backing into that, how much lead time are we going to need from a technology perspective to deliver to that? And that honestly is how we start to prioritize our funding within our budget. And while Michael's security budget is separate from the IT budget, we even still look at it holistically, because there are a lot of security initiatives that Michael as the CISO leads, but in order to carry them out, he needs members from my team to fulfill them. So we have to have that ongoing transparency, the collective three of us, the three chiefs in IT, have to appreciate what each other is being asked to do by their respective leaders so that we position the staffing. Because oftentimes I would say if there's shared staff, it's mostly team members from my group coming to support what Brett may need or Michael may need. Do you think that's fair, Brett?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think our organization has had a wonderful cultural shift over the last couple of years to want to include IT early. It's been a more traditional way of coming in after a deal is signed, a vendor selected, and the network doesn't work or something, but when IT gets notified that this project even exists. And the world that we're living in now is wonderful in that the vast majority of the time, the business leaders are asking the question, well, have you run this by security yet? Is IT involved? What can Epic do this? Or some existing platform that we already have? So that really helps our strategy become simplified, where if they'll just come to us with their business case problem, their business problem they're trying to solve, and then let us find the technology that we either have that just could be repurposed or a new vendor. And so our roles as the work pops up in our different verticals really are about keeping our head up for those new technologies that could assist in the strategy or business planning of the organization. Honestly, there's not a lot of infighting over Michael gets special treatment with security, but otherwise there's no infighting with our budgetary wishes and desires, because they really come from outside of IT, if that makes a lot of sense. I advocate for things, and there are a few projects that probably wouldn't have happened if I wasn't advocating for them, but most of it, we're supporting what the business is asking for.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that episode. Great content. If you get a chance to go back and listen to it, it's worth your time. Our next, number 9, we have another pair, another twosome, if you will. We have David Muntz and Schade, and we did this Jeopardy type format early on in the year, and we talked about the state of the industry, and I had like six or 8 topics. We actually had to split it into 2 episodes, and I let them pick the topics, and we then went through with specific questions on each one of the topics. And in this clip, what we talk about is preparing our staffs for what's coming next. And we talk about professional development, the challenges based on maybe your market size, and those kind of things. So here's a great clip from David Muntz and Schade. What can we do within our health IT organizations to prepare people for what's coming next? And is that our responsibility as CIOs of the organization? And if it is our responsibility, what are we going to do? David, I'll start with you.
By the way, I do think that training is actually a reward for the people in IT. It's an incredible motivator. And so professional development seems to be a way to attract and retain people. So couldn't agree more that doing that is important. And it's important for selfish reasons, the ones I mentioned. If you want to keep people, what I used to tell people that worked for me, and I found it very effective, and by the way, I meant it, is that every year that you stay at this organization, I will find a way to make sure that you get some kind of professional development, and next year, your resume will be so good that you wouldn't leave, because the year after that it'll be that much better. And the idea is I want to make you prepared for the next job, but I want that next job to be inside my organization. And so it's not enough to change just the staff. You have to change the environment in which you're working. And that's where you need to be looking for innovations and how you can use technologies that people haven't thought about. And you have to move people's skills along. And it is true that there are a few people, a few percentage points of people who just don't want to change. They want to keep doing the same things with the same skills that they want. But in general, I find that the vast, overwhelming majority of people want to be trained, they want to be challenged, they want you to ask them to get smarter next year than they are this year. I think having those kind of people around you makes you better. And the idea is the smarter they get, the smarter you need to be. And so as a CIO, I've always felt pushed because they would always bring topics that I wasn't familiar with to me, and I felt like that old joke, you don't need to outrun the bear, you just need to outrun your friend or your companion in this case. And so the idea is I find that I probably get about 100 emails from listservs every day, and people go, that's ridiculous. And it's like, It may be ridiculous, but it helps me look for trends. It also helps me look for what's new that I wouldn't have anticipated had the staff not brought it to me or brought it to me. And so I think those are interesting things to pay attention to.
So one of the things that I would say about staffing is there is a huge difference in the staffing challenges and probably strategies in markets that we've all been in, right? I was in the Boston market for many years. You, Bill, were in the LA, Southern California market. David, Dallas market. You've been working with a client in the New York market. Very, very, very different in terms of competition, being able to draw people. When an Epic implementation is done at one major system in the area, that you can get some of them onto yours if you're not that far, and they don't have to move houses and change kids' schools. They're ready for the next one, right? But how many healthcare organizations and IT shops are not in those big markets, who are just in the very same need for talent, and how do they find that talent, and how do they retain that talent, and how do they grow that talent? I'm in a market like that right now. It's beautiful. I love seeing the mountains every day in Burlington, Vermont, but it's a little far away and a little bit harder to recruit for. So those are really different staffing challenges that you have to look at. But when it comes down to it, the culture of your organization, your commitment to your people, your investing both time and money in training them and preparing them for the future, some of that is the same, but you have to recognize that you've got some different challenges.
All right, throughout the show, I'm going to throw out a couple of things. This is first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of crazy statistics about the show. And these are some things that I just find fascinating. Coming into this year, we had 170 episodes. That's through 2018 and 2019. In 2020, this is episode 345, which means we doubled the number of episodes in just 1 year. You know, part of that is we just went to daily episodes during the COVID series, and we've just done a lot more content this year. We've had close to 250,000 downloads this year. We'll see how this episode does, but pretty much approaching that number for the year. So that's a huge record for us. That's actually almost 2.5 times what it was last year. Go figure. And I want to give you some of the things that sort of fascinate me. Apple Podcasts account for 45% of the downloads. Overcast, which is the app I use on my iPhone, accounts for 14% of the downloads. It's a great application, by the way. You can listen to it a little faster. I've been told that I sound good at 2.5 times speed. I can't imagine that that's the case, but some people have said. So Overcast, 14%, Apple Podcast, 45%. Web browser is the next highest at 7%. I find that interesting as well. Devices are what you think they are. 76% of all people who listen to the podcast listen to it on their iPhone. Android is 10%, and Windows computers are 6%. And final crazy, we'll do some other statistics, but where are people listening from? 89% of all downloads are happening in North America, 4% in Europe, 3% in Asia. So those are the top 3 areas. And those are just some interesting fun facts that I thought I would share with you. A couple more coming a little later in the show. All right, at number 8, we have Judy Kirby. Judy is a friend. I've known Judy since I came into the industry, and wanted to have her on the show to really talk about the process. And I've done this as when I left St. Joe's, I interviewed for a couple CIO jobs. I go through the retained search process, and I had a bunch of questions, and I thought you guys might have some of those questions as well. So we tapped Judy and asked her a bunch of those questions. And one of the things was talking about preparing for the next interview and talking about video interviews, which is now really the norm. And so in this clip, she shares some of the coaching that she gives to her clients. Is there a way I can prepare ahead of time for the interview? Is there something like research that you tell people to do or to prepare? Do you tell them to, I don't know, do you tell them to do practice interviews? What do you generally coach people to do?
We coach them a lot when we're working with them, either as a candidate or a coaching client, because the video interview can either make it or break it for you. And now video interviews have become the norm. And very few people have experience to really do those well. Everything from, and I know I commented on your amazing background, to some people having clutter, to some people having animals jump up on the desk in front of them. But it all comes down to you've got to do your research, both on how to do an interview well and on the organization, on the position. You've got to make sure that you can highlight in your background what they want to hear, but you also have to practice a video interview. You have to make sure that you can connect to the platform they're using, that your bandwidth is enough that it's not going to hang up. And these things are so important. And as you and I were talking about, first impressions. And if you're late because you couldn't get your video working and you're in technology, that speaks volumes. So you really want to practice with somebody, record yourself, look at it, look for tells, look for ticks, look for your background. Preparation is absolutely the key to success for video interviews.
Yeah, I want to thank Judy for coming on the show. That was a lot of fun. We will definitely go back and talk to some of the Kirby and Associates people in 2021. Interesting topics. All right, coming in at number 7, we have the post-COVID rise of the insurers with Rob DeMichiei. I love talking to Rob. Rob is brilliant. He's the former CFO for UPMC. We met, and he was actually highlighted on the COVID series as well. He came on a couple times. We were trying to make sense of what the financial impact of COVID was going to be on health systems. And he was really helpful for me to really understand it. And one of the things we found was you almost had to look at it on a week by week basis, almost a daily basis at times, based on how the numbers were going, based on how once we took the restrictions off of the elective procedures, how quickly they were coming back. We were having conversations pretty often. Rob is coming on the show again in 2021. I hope he becomes a recurring guest. I love talking about the financials. He is instrumental in this clip, in my understanding of the financials. In this clip, we talk about increasing the return on investment and how the pandemic, not only the pandemic, but this was a direction that healthcare was heading, that we were exploring, better uses of our capital and more sound financial underpinnings to the decisions that we were making. So here's Rob DeMichiei, former CFO at UPMC at number 7.
We're dealing with a 15% revenue loss, and we're trying to redesign at the same time. And then we have these, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of projects that we've done over the years that becomes a debt burden. How are we going to juggle that?
I think we've got to stop the addiction to capital and the addiction to growth in healthcare, right? If you look from an industry standpoint, healthcare has one of the lowest sort of returns on invested capital. We create these facilities and locations, and then they're grossly underutilized in most cases. And that was all driven by this addiction to growth and the fee-for-service environment I call kind of the golden goose. The more you do, the more you make. And like the golden goose, we're killing it because our employers and our country and our GDP can no longer pay for it. So I think and this also becomes a cash conservation method, right? By reducing new capital projects and the cash consumption that's related to them. So this is no longer about growth. The capital needs to be spent on transformation. So how do we look at our existing facilities? What can we do to increase the throughput of those existing facilities? How can we consolidate? So it's actually fewer physical locations. How do we close? I can't say outright hospitals, but that may even be the case for a large system. But how do we close physician offices? How do we close surgery centers to increase the volume and the throughput of the existing remaining facilities? So capital will need to be redeployed in a way which delivers productivity and efficiency and lowers cost, as opposed to providing capacity for additional volume or amenities for patient experience.
All right. Before we get to number 6, just want to make you aware that next year we are going to be doing something a little different on the Newsday show. On the Newsday show, I'm going to have a rotating list of people, and it is going to be a duet from now on. We are going to have me and another person on the show. We have Drex DeFord signed up. We have Schade signed up. Let's see. We have Ann Weiler, former CEO for a startup, lined up, and we are lining up a handful of other guests that are going to be recurring guests. So that Tuesday Newsday show is going to be a little more dynamic, us talking about the news and what's going on. We're going to continue to engage with you on LinkedIn. So continue to do that. That's a great way for you to be a part of the community and be a part of the show. All right, on to number 6. Healthcare digital transformation is, went into overdrive during the pandemic. And we had the opportunity to sit down with Paddy, Padmanabhan, and Ed Marx, who had just written a book on healthcare digital transformation. And in this clip is really Paddy who's talking, and it's him talking about preparing for implementing your digital transformation. It's really about developing your roadmap. This is a great interview. If you get a chance to go back and listen to it, it's also a great book. I crammed for this podcast. I got the book, I think 24 hours roughly before we recorded it. And I just sat on that couch over there and read the book and took notes and marked it up. And we then had the interview the next day. Great insights. I love the research that they did. I love the real world experience that Ed brought to the conversation as well. So here it is at number 6, the Healthcare Digital Transformation Roadmap. Paddy, readiness and assessment and benchmarking. What are we doing during this phase?
What COVID-19 has done is it has exposed many organizations to structural weaknesses that they're going to have to deal with at some point, especially in terms of their readiness for digital health. So what we're saying in the book is that all health systems must invest in developing a digital roadmap. It doesn't mean you're going to execute it all on day one, but you must have a roadmap. And we have given some very practical guidance on how to develop a roadmap, some tools and templates, frameworks, and so on. But it's very important for digital leaders and health system leaders to, first of all, do a self-assessment of where they are in this journey. And there's multiple tools you can use, and we have provided several. And using that self-assessment, you have to build a roadmap to where you want to be and in what time frame. Ed mentioned the goals that they had, which was move 50% of all outpatient visits to virtual visits. Now, that's a great goal, but you want it done in the next 3 months? Are you giving yourself 3 years to do it? And how are you going to get there? So you have to have a roadmap for that. And I think that roadmap needs to be put together for the entire organization. Then you prioritize the initiatives within that, set some goals, and move forward with it. That is really what we're saying in the book.
All right, a few more fun stats for you. YouTube, we finally decided to get serious about YouTube this year. We had been producing videos since episode number 8, I think it was. Early on, I had some millennial consultants, like my son, my daughter, my nephew, who were helping me out. And they all told me, you have to do YouTube. And I'm like, who is going to watch this? And I said, no, you got to do it. You got to do the videos. And so we did. And I did it reluctantly to start, and now have seen the power of having these videos available for the community. So here's some stats from our YouTube channel. We're now up to 600 subscribers on the channel itself. This year we had 17,000 views of our videos. We had 1,700 hours of watch time of the videos. The videos are found predominantly through Google search. Google search is 25% of how the videos are found. Our website referrals are 15%. LinkedIn is 14%, and YouTube search is 2%, which is interesting to me that, people aren't going to YouTube and searching from there, that they're finding it actually from the Google search. So anyway, just thought I'd share some of those facts with you. I find them interesting. All right, coming in at number 5, I actually came in touch with Sam Banerjee from Texas Health Resources. He was on a panel at the Scottsdale Institute that I was moderating, and I was really impressed. Really had a great conversation with him on that panel, and asked him to come on the show. and he supports their digital experience at Texas Health Resources. And in this clip, we started talking about what IT infrastructure, what's the foundation from an IT perspective that is required for creating great digital experiences for healthcare. And this is Sam Banerjee sharing his insights at number 5.
What kind of IT infrastructure is required to get this right and really support a seamless consumer experience across the entire journey?
So that's a great question. So we are rebuilding and relooking at the whole IT stack that we have today. Okay, because the IT stack that we have today is to service our present or the past, it has serviced our past. So we are looking at a new set of technologies that we can add to our stack or build something new so that we can service the consumer needs that we have. I'll give you some examples. We are looking at a completely brand new CRM system, which can act across providers, our businesses, as well as our consumers, right? So we are trying to build a whole CRM stack. We're also looking at the way we collect preferences from the consumers. It has to be in a central place so that we can act on them. We are looking at an open API-based structure so that we can connect with any external ecosystem that we need to. These are new muscle build, which we never had.
Yeah.
And this is, if you have to really think about it, is a parallel stack that is getting built at this point of time. And at some point, we'll fold back whatever from our past has to come in that stack. That's the path we are on.
All right, we're getting down there. Now we're at number 4. And, actually one of my favorite interviews this year was with Aaron Meary. It's really the first time I had met Aaron was on the show. And that happens a lot more now than it used to. Early on, it was just me calling people I knew and my peers and the people within my network. What happens now is I'll read an article or read some content out there and I'll say, that's really interesting. And I have like 2 or 3 follow-on questions. And instead of sending an email saying, hey, I have some follow-on questions, I just ask them to come on the show and I ask follow-on questions and you get to hear the response. Well, Aaron is pretty active on social media. He's pretty active out there in the community. And every time I read some of his stuff, I think, this is somebody I want to have on the show. I invited him. He accepted and he did not disappoint. In this, we actually talked about strategy, architecture, innovation. We talked about a lot of topics. He's a great guest. And in this clip, we actually talk about attracting and retaining the best talent for your health IT organization. This is a challenge that a lot of health systems have. And I really appreciate the wisdom that Aaron shared with us on the show. So here's Aaron Meary at number 4. From an operations standpoint, let's start with people. Austin's a really competitive market, as you said, Silicon Hills for talent. So how do you attract and retain the top talent for your health system?
Yeah, great question. So a few things. What we have found is that top talent is attracted to top talent, right? As you said earlier, I chose to come to UT because of the people that are here on our board and our leadership team. People like Dr. Clay Johnston, who was at UCSF and now he's our dean. People like Dr. Martin Harris, who is CIO of Cleveland Clinic, who's now our chief business officer. So I'm surrounded by people that are just brilliant in their field, that literally wrote the book. Martin wrote the book on how to be a CIO 20 years ago, right? I mean, it's amazing the people I'm around. So that's number 1. Top talent's going to want to come to top talent. So that's number 1. Number 2, your mission, right? UT's mission of the whole "what starts here" mantra really is what resoundingly makes the ethos of this entire university and of our health system. And so the ability to break the norm and do different things brings out some of the best, especially young talent that is more gravitated. Yeah, you could pay them maybe 30, 40, 50K more if you go work for Google, and that's great. Google's doing phenomenal things. I respect them. But sometimes they want to come to something that's a lot more than just money. That's something about you giving back to the community, that you're able to give back in a way to build something. And number 3, how often do you really get a chance to start something new in a tier 1, R1 academic world-renowned university? I mean, that never happens, right? I mean, you've got the Harvards and the Stanfords and the others out there that are just blisteringly amazing. But how often does this happen? And so what I have found is that a lot of talent that is leaving their established places to come here, they're attracted to that. They're like, hey, I get to learn from the best. I get to be part of the best. I get to be a Longhorn, which is, hook 'em, that's how I am. And then last but not least, I get to build something new, which is, again, a resume bullet that you really can't offer a lot of people.
Right.
So those things tend to attract the best, and retain the talent that could be and probably is being solicited by the Googles and others of the world. Again, nothing wrong with them. It's what do you actually want to do with your life?
All right, that was number 4. We're now down to the top 3, but before we go there, quick note on the show. For 2021, we're adding a new show, and we're actually adding a new channel for that matter. Today in Health IT is going to be a daily podcast that is 5 to 7 minutes in length, where we cover one news story a day. To subscribe to that, you're going to have to go to todayinhealthit.com and subscribe however you listen to your podcast. There's not going to be video for this. It's just going to be audio. The thought process behind this is it's a great way for you to stay current. You can listen to these on a daily basis. It's only 5 to 7 minutes. It'll keep you. I'm going to pick out a news story that I think is relevant to health IT, to specifically the things that you're doing within your healthcare organization. And I'm going to talk about those things for 5 to 7 minutes. I'm going to share what's in the article itself, give my sort of so what. Why is this important, and why does it matter, and how do I think about it as a CIO? But I just wanted to make you aware of that. So todayinhealthit.com, it's not going to show up. The shows are not going to show up in this channel. So if you're waiting for them to show up in the This Week in Health IT channel, it's not going to be there. You're going to have to subscribe to Today in Health IT. And those shows will start showing up on January 4th. So the 4th is going to be when they're going to show up. You're going to want to subscribe now to get in line. There's actually one show out there to sort of kicks it off and gives you a little background on it. So head over to todayinhealthit.com today and get subscribed to that. And we will see you in the new year. It's going to be great. All right, let's get down to number 3. Number 3, we had an interesting conversation with Chris Harper. He's in charge of data and analytics at the University of Kansas. At least that's what his role was at the time of the show. And I thought it was interesting because he had taken an organization that wasn't advanced, that was struggling a little bit from the data and analytics side, and he was giving us sort of a roadmap that he followed to mature an organization, to take over and then to mature an organization. And there were so many things in this. There was a couple aspects of this. One is I hear this conversation all the time. We are not as mature as we need to be in the data and analytics space. We could be more mature in that space. I hear that from a lot of health systems, from some clients and others. So this is a space that I think there's a lot of need. And clearly it resonated. To get up to number 3 means that a lot of people downloaded it and listened to the episode. In this, we talk about matching the specific needs of your organization, the culture, and really adapting that on an ongoing basis to make sure that you're meeting the specific needs of your organization around the data needs of the organization. So here is Chris Harper at number 3. You seem to be communicating that each organization's culture and data needs and maybe even systems and governance is a little different. So you almost have to spend that time digging into all those elements to make sure that you're identifying the right program. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing for healthcare. Am I hearing you correct?
Yep, that's correct. And then you also have to look back and evaluate that every year, right? So we essentially developed this 3-year roadmap to kind of guide us where we need to go, whether it's with funding, with additional opportunities. When I started that journey, quality and safety obviously is our number one focus. And so, but at the same time, we had opportunities to look at our improvement effort with cost opportunities. And so what I typically do is, since it's easy to count with your one hand, I look at 5 different opportunities or questions you're trying to address using data, and really spending most of your time understanding not only where you're starting from, a culture, technology, the people and all of that, but also are the 5 most important things that your senior executives or your physicians are looking for, and really focusing on that to really understand where your starting point is. And then really, if you wait a year or 2 to get value out of it, you've already lost the battle, right? So you've already got funding for maybe supporting it for 12 months, but if you're not showing your incremental value and how you're using this really resource to improve outcome, you're not going to really get that next year of funding. So So really, we looked at what are some of the 5 questions and then quick wins we can have.
All right, a little behind the scenes for you. There are times, prior to me getting my production team, there are times where, quite frankly, I would get to a Wednesday and I wouldn't have a guest for a Friday show. And so at that point, I'd just scramble. I'd call some friends and get them on the show. Well, one of my favorite people to do that with is Charles Boise. Charles Boise is brilliant. He's a data scientist. He's an architect. He's worked for a lot of organizations, UCI in Southern California, Stony Brook in New York. He is now the chief technology officer, I believe, chief technology officer for a startup out of Jacksonville that has done extremely well, and they've grown and done really well. And Charles is the person I call a lot of times when I have a technical question. And so I thought, all right, I call him up on a Wednesday. I'm like, Charles, I want to do a show with you where I'm the CIO, you're the CTO, and we're going to discuss the current healthcare challenges. And he loved the idea. And we started plowing through them. It's like, all right, Charles, we need to do this kind of reporting. All right, Charles, we need to do this for interoperability. All right, Charles, we need to do this around cloud. And we just went at it for actually one of the longer episodes. I think it was like 40 minutes. And I just had a blast doing it. It was a lot of fun. In this clip, Charles and I talked about cloud strategy. And I just threw out the question that everybody wants to ask, which is, what the heck is a cloud strategy? And I love this conversation because it now seems so appropriate given what we experienced since the pandemic hit and how important the cloud strategy was for agility of the healthcare organization and our ability to adapt to the changing environment. So here we are at number 2, Charles Boise with a CIO and CTO discussing the current healthcare challenges. What is a cloud strategy?
Yeah, what is a cloud strategy? So I'll give you my definition of it. It's not a choice. And what I mean by that is you have your own on-prem cloud. You could have a private cloud located somewhere else in a co-located environment. You've got Google, you've got Azure, you've got AWS. The whole ecosystem is a cloud. Does that make sense to you? You're not making a choice. You're in a cloud environment now, whether you know it or not. And because of how we are doing things now from an API perspective, if I want to run a workload in Google BigQuery, then I will run a workload in Google BigQuery. If from a storage perspective, I want to store all my data on-prem, great. If there's some tools within AWS that I want to bring on and work in my environment, I can do that as well. So I can move workloads around as I need. Is it all or none? No, it absolutely isn't. And I think this is something that we'll see evolve as time evolves, where I'm not making a decision to shut down my data center and move to, let's say, AWS. I'm going to do everything in AWS. No, there's interconnectivity between all those cloud vendors, and I've used them, and they're fast. So we are in a cloud environment. We're going to best utilize it.
And from a CIO perspective, what I would say a cloud strategy is, it is you getting the most agility and efficiency for your organization, providing the most capabilities to your organization. The reason we talk about cloud at all is because cloud gives you the agility, the efficiency, and the capabilities. We can spin things up overnight that we used to have to plan 6 months for and order servers and put them in your data center. All right, we're there. We are at number 1. Before we get there, one last thing I want to do. I really want to thank my staff. So this year, because we have sponsors, I was able to add staff, and it made things so much smoother. I want to thank Tess Russell, who is our head of marketing and social engagement, and Tracy Miller, who heads up our production efforts. I've enjoyed this year so much more because I can focus in on the conversations, and I think it's really elevated the content. I can focus in, I can give almost a full hour of preparation to just generating questions that I want to ask this person and doing research for myself on some of the other things that they are saying. And I hope what I'm able to do as a result of that is just ask the questions, the follow-up questions that aren't being asked by, say, a traditional journalist, but somebody who has an IT background, really thinking through where they're going with these things. I really enjoyed this year a lot more because of that staff. So I really want to thank Tess and really want to thank Tracy. And if you're wondering who listens to every episode, those two listen to every episode. So over and above just myself hearing every episode, those two have listened to every episode. And every now and then they'll say, well, I'm not a healthcare expert, but the more episodes they listen to and the more conversations we have, the more I'm realizing that these two are really picking up on healthcare, health IT issues and those kind of things. It's fun. And I think that same thing is an opportunity for you and your staff. So thank you for listening. All right, on to number one. Number one, healthcare in the 21st century with Anish Chopra. Anish is somebody I met early on in my CIO career, and we were on a panel together. Actually, he was moderating the panel. It was unlike any panel I've ever been on. Anish engaged the entire audience. Usually a panel, you're just having the discussion with the people who are up on the stage. He engaged everybody. And because of that, we had a topic we were going to cover, and we ended up covering a completely different topic because the people in the audience wanted to talk about a certain topic. That's the kind of person Anish is. He engages the community, he listens to the community, and then he helps us to really think about how these things are going to impact healthcare and how we should potentially be thinking about how they're going to impact healthcare. Anish is very engaged in DC, very engaged with the with HHS, with ONC, in those conversations that go on there. He's engaged with the startup community as well. So we get to talk about a lot of different things. In this conversation, though, we really focused in on 21st century cures and interoperability. That is going to be a huge topic for 2021. And it's no surprise that this ended up being the number one most downloaded episode for this year. First of all, because Anish is just so articulate. And second of all, because this is the topic for 2021. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do interoperability well? So here's Anish Chopra at number one.
Because the banking industry got its act together, self-organized, and built the standards by which the Mint.coms of the world could connect to the banks, all within a regulated context. Why healthcare? 10 years after the initial data set was published, why, Bill, has the healthcare industry not added a single data element beyond the minimum required in the open source domain? Have we just been so busy we can't add a single element in 10 years? It's been
we don't tend to self-organize the way you talk about. We tend to, I remember sitting across from another CIO and I said, hey, and this was something simple, right? So we had a health information exchange in Southern California.
Yes.
And I sat across from him. I said, hey, we'd like to share our data through this HIE. And the CIO said, that's great. We don't want to share our data with you. Right. And I'm like, and I'm not going to reveal who that was but to be honest with you, at that point in history, that was well within their prerogative to say, yeah, it's not in our best interest to give you our patient data. You guys can then go after our patients. We don't want that.
And that's why you see the need. What you just said is why Seema Varma said at HIMSS a year and a half ago, when we were still meeting in person, that effectively, and I'm paraphrasing, you made me do this. You, the industry, in the failure to self-organize for any reason, because of the financial incentives, the market dynamics, whatever, that compelled what she said was a sort of deregulatory agency leader to want to impose some of the strictest and boldest regulations on interoperability we've had in the industry in the decade.
Amazing guests this year, amazing insights. I really have to thank all of them for coming on the show. I've benefited greatly. I think the community, actually the emails would tell me, and the instant messages that I've received would tell me that people have really benefited from the show and the people that we've had on the show. So I really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to sit down with me to record something that is going to last and really help people. I've had people just coming into the industry, new to the industry, young people coming out of college saying, hey, this is really helpful. I've had people take over new jobs and said, hey, I listened to 5 or 6 of your episodes on this topic. It has really helped me. That wouldn't be possible without our great guests. So thank you for coming on the show. I just want to recap. Top 10. Number 10 was Trisha Julian and Brett Oliver talking about a team approach to health IT. At number 9 was David Muntz and Schade on the state of the industry, and we were talking about really preparing your staff for what's next. Little did we know that what's next was a pandemic. Number 8, finding the next role with Judy Kirby with Kirby Partners, retained search firm. Number 7 was the post-COVID rise of Insurers with Rob DeMichiei, former CFO for UPMC. Number 6, healthcare digital transformation with Paddy, Padmanabhan, and Ed Marx. Then we went down to number 5, creating digital experiences with Sam Banerjee with Texas Health Resources. Another great conversation. Number 4, we talked a lot of different topics with Aaron Meary with UT, University of Texas Health System. And then number 3, Chris Harper with the University of Kansas, talking about data analytics and governance. And number 2, we had my friend Charles Boise, where we had a CIO CTO conversation around the healthcare challenges. And at number 1, Anish Chopra with healthcare in the 21st century, talking about interoperability in the 21st Century Cures Act. If you heard something and you're thinking, hey, this is good stuff, go to the website, thisweekhealth.com. Check out the full episode. We have transcripts out there. You can go to the YouTube channel, not only check out the full episode, but there's also clips out there for each one, smaller clips that you can listen to some of these segments. You can sign up for Clip Notes is another thing you can do and get a summary and clips of each episode as they air in 2021. So 24 hours after the show airs, you'll get an email telling you, hey, here's who was on the show and here's what they said. If you want us to continue making this show, there are 2 things that really help us. One is send us a note. We love your feedback. We are constantly trying to improve the show to make it more valuable to you. That is really our litmus test. Is this valuable for the people in healthcare and healthcare IT? So your notes help us to continue to strive closer to that goal. The second thing is to share it with the peer, right? We want to get this content into as many healthcare practitioners, health IT practitioners as possible. We believe that by growing the community and sharing these insights from these great health leaders, we have the opportunity to reimagine healthcare everywhere for everyone. And I hope you agree with that. So please share it with your peers if you have the opportunity. That's all for this week. And really, that's all for this year. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.